When I sent the topic in, it was again, period, again with an exclamation, and then again with an exclamation and a dollar sign and a frustration, you know, one of those cartoonish expressions of expletives. Because in our rehearsal situation, we often find ourselves in places that we just can't get out of quickly enough. And I thought if we're going to talk about rehearsal management, we should have a mind for how to avoid things and how to stay on track. I want to use you as a way of extracting ideas and anecdotes, because when you come to think of it, you've spent more time in rehearsal than you had planned. Performing. Maybe three to one. Harold, is there a statistic about that?
No, I don't.
Besides what it takes to take an instrument and get up to speed so that you're useful in an ensemble, besides that, we've spent as singers or players at least 3 times, maybe 4 or 5 or 10 times more time sitting in a rehearsal and making music happen in a group setting. One of the benefits of being in a group setting is that it's like a team sport. And I think that's blessed the Salvation Army so much. Sometimes, I know in Europe they're looking for ways of utilizing sports in the same way. And actually having soccer and football and other kinds of sports be involved with young people so that you could not only teach them what it means to do things together, but give them a slice of life and tell them what it means to cope with problems and getting along with your neighbor and, you know, coming together and achieving something, and maybe give them a message from the Lord. So being in a team sport is a wonderful thing for society and community, but it comes with its problems, especially when you have to be in front and you're supposed to be managing. So just for a moment, I want you to go back, reflect in your years of experience, maybe high school or singing company or brass band or a symphony, where you've sat in a rehearsal and it's been either so dire that it's unbearable and painful and you want to get out of there, or it's been so uplifting and wonderful that you just want to freeze fry that moment, flash freeze that moment. Give me an example of a rehearsal situation that has gone one way or the other.
The first night that Gordon Ward took over the Motor City Brass Band, it was so refreshing. I felt like I should applaud at the end of rehearsal for him. He was amazing. Just everything he did, he moved the rehearsal along. His pacing was wonderful. His conducting was great. His interaction with the group, all of his ideas, and the way he expressed it. By the end, I could barely sleep at night. I was so excited to have him.
Well, that's quite a testimony. It says a lot about Gord, but it also says something about his predecessor, whoever that was, that you were now in a completely different world and it was blessing you instead of. Thanks for that. That was a lesson in itself. Did you hear all the things she was writing off? Pacing and what she said, what Gord said to the band and how it got everybody excited. Good for you. Is he still?
I wasn't alone on that feeling either. Yeah.
Did you tap your batons on the?
Yes. Yes, he's still our conductor.
And anybody have a painful rehearsal experience? Yep, go ahead.
It's not from rehearsal for me. It was painful for me to watch. It was my son doing Little League baseball.
Okay.
And 9-year-olds out there, and what he did is he had the coach, volunteer coach, so, you know, he's the guy out there doing his best, but the kids all took a spot in the field, and then this kid got the bat, and then you had to wait there until it was your turn as you rotated through. And I thought my son was gonna, I don't know, hurt somebody. He was beside himself the entire time. He couldn't believe it. He just wanted to get out of there. I felt so bad for him. It's just painful to watch all these kids. Not just my son, but all these kids out there. 9-year-olds just waiting for their turn to go hit.
Right.
Meanwhile, there's this kid with him. And then they get done, and he's climbing over the fence to come leave. Like he couldn't wait to get out of there. And one of his buddies comes and pushes him off the fence. as he's climbing, so Drew climbed back over the fence with his bat and proceeded to
No way.
hit the kid's Gatorade bottle out of his hand.
Okay.
And the Gatorade exploded all over the place, and he got a big smile on his face, and I went, I understand, and then we left, but it was,
You got it.
it was a painful practice for him, especially in
Life lessons, for the parents as well. Lots of great movies that start with that scene. I have an example from my own corps band experience. I was a bandmaster at a corps in Toronto called the Tobu Corps. Doesn't spell like it sounds, but there was a time in our history we had a lot of players. There were about 6 tubas and about 9 trombones, and I mean, with a band that large, you got a lot of passengers, right? So it was a messy experience for the most part for me. But it was playoff time, and the Maple Leafs, the Toronto Maple Leafs hockey team, were trying yet again to do something, and one of my tuba players had an earpiece in his ear, and he was listening to his radio. And sure enough, when there was a goal scored, he blurted out unexpectedly how happy he was, and that shows you the lengths that some people go to enjoy their team sport, and regardless of what else they're trying to do. We've all had those situations where whether we're sitting there, we're watching, we gotta wait our turn while the baritones get it right, or we've got to, one thing that I loved about Harold's pace this morning was that we were engaged. And with my ears, I didn't always hear what this gentleman had to say, but we stayed at it long enough that it began to, the shape of what we did emerged for all of us, and I really respected that. And I think the pace of things is one area where I think all of us can learn something about. Well, you've all been there, so if you're going to be here, you've got to remember what it was like to be there. The pace of things has to be engaging. If you let your people sit too long, whether they're singers or brass players, they just get unfocused, they don't know where you are, blah, blah, blah. So we want to go through some of these things that bless us and bother us about leading rehearsal. If I can get my new good friend Jess to come up and be our scribe. First of all, let's think about the kinds of differences it makes if you are working with children or youth or adults in a rehearsal situation. You are now the leader of this group, whether it be children or youth or adults. What does that change about how you approach that rehearsal time? Let's say you've got 45 minutes. Anybody have more than that if you're with children? An hour maybe? Half an hour maybe? A very short time. So mindset, what do we do with children so that we make the most of that period of time? Let's have answers.
I know I have to actually know what I'm going to rehearse, because if I'm wasting time figuring out what I'm going to do next, then chaos
Good.
comes.
Yeah. Time. Yeah.
You vary what you're doing, so you know you're only going to have their attention probably for maybe 10 minutes at a time, and then switch what you're doing after that.
So I'll just switch to a new piece or
Yeah.
a different section of the same piece or
Just
yeah.
the one
Variety.
Variety.
Big one. Good word. Variety. Variety. That helps with your pace. And you may not have achieved what you wanted in that first moment, but you know it's time for a change because you see the eyes start to close. And it's not always just the eyes, it's the body language, it's the fidgeting with children, it's the talking, it's the having to pick your nose or pick up something off the floor. Or, do you work with papers with your kids?
Yes, we do.
So they have words or music?
Music, books.
Excellent, okay. And are you teaching notes or are you teaching musicality?
A little bit of both.
Yep, at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because that's another factor with children. You've got to get past the, do I read? Am I so young that I can't even read what the words are?
So when I have my 5th grader sharing the music and following, like pointing with their finger to follow along.
Excellent.
And then at about January, February, then the kids are starting to understand what they can do on their own. So it's not like a
Excellent.
boring thing.
All right, so we need to put down that
Huh?
we're sharing with those who can and cannot read. If it's working with children, we pair them off if it's possible. Give everybody the words, but to have notes as well. That's excellent. Okay.
And then also, I have some kids with special needs, and so they like to have a list of what we're doing. They wanna see, so they know, oh, we're gonna sing this song. They don't really like that song, but 2 songs later, they really
Right.
like that song, so then, and I started doing that with the visual singing company as well, and they like to know what the agenda is.
Yes.
They wanna be prepared, you know. And then sometimes I'll just list like the 4 songs, and then I'll say, which one would we like to do today first? And let them
Okay.
pick.
Okay.
So-
That's engaging your little singers in the decision-making process. That's excellent. I had an experience not so long ago with a very important leader who should have known better. And we came into the rehearsal situation, and he was putting music on chairs. And the rehearsal should have started, but he was putting music on chairs and deciding what he was going to do. I couldn't believe it. So I think the usage of time and knowing what you're going to do within the framework, if your rehearsal is a half an hour, it's not very long. You're going to get to 2 songs, maybe. So you've got 1 song that you're going to do next, and then further on you're going to do another song, and you've got to know the limits of that rehearsal and keep jamming it in there. If we change the age spectrum and we go to a youth choir type setting, what's going to help us do what we need to do with youth?
It's the same. To me, it's the same. You still have to be able to prepare for what you're gonna sing. You have to have an agenda of what you're gonna do. You don't necessarily have to put it up there, but you still have to have an idea of what you're gonna do. So,
I think the choir needs a deadline. So if you put the list on the wall, this is what we have to get done today, like during the moment, you know, like, so this is what we have to get done today.
Yeah.
Like, just put it out there. Because if they're already inhibited, right, at that age. So, there's some question what I'm gonna do next, and you don't get the response yet. It's a little more upfront to say this will get done, so.
How many use a list in front of the people when they're doing a rehearsal? Yeah. I have, and I don't always. And I think it's up to you whether or not you think, if you've got a lot of music, like when we rehearse a Christmas program, I've got 14 songs. If the people come in and they sit down, then they can go, okay, we're gonna do those 5 songs, and then they can get their music in order, and it helps you and it helps them as well.
I was just gonna say, I know as an amateur percussionist who doesn't really know how to read percussion music, it's helpful when I have a list of what songs we're gonna practice in band, so that I can make sure ahead of time I have all the equipment that I need ahead of time, you know, and so I'm always going and taking a photocopy of Chris's list of what he's working on, so that I can be prepared.
How many that are here are currently leading something? Okay, and has everyone been in front of a group doing leadership of some kind? Yeah. I have a note somewhere on these pages that says, your library is your best friend. Your librarian. Or right after pianist, the first thing I do when I walk into a brand new situation, walk over, hello, what's your name? I love you, I want to be your friend. And
I say that every week.
doesn't do much good.
His wife's the couple. You better say it.
What is your name? Priscilla? Is that what her name is? I have another anecdote about working with children. We have a very special lady. She's gone to glory now. Her name was Donna Cully, and she led the singing company for 15 or 20 years, and she also led the songster group at our core for 15 or 20 years. And with children, she would walk around and listen to the children, and if you were not doing exactly what you should do, you're going to be one of Donna's soft singers. and they would kind of burst with pride. Oh, I'm one of the soft singers. And I think at a certain age they got to realize that it wasn't a compliment.
I don't have that kind of voice.
She was a school teacher, and she taught little children at school. So the sing company was a natural for her. She brought her music, and of course she would sing to them. How many sing to your groups? You sing? You should sing. That's the quickest way to get your point across. You can talk about it for a long time, or you can just give an example. Even with your destroyed voice if you can't sing. So what that meant, sing. Whatever age group you're working with, what about your parts? Bandmasters, do you bother trying to sing a part? You do? You're a school teacher as well? Do you sing a part? It's there, bang, got it. There's the rhythm, there's the style, there's the nuance, right? And you haven't had to demonstrate it or talk about it, make long speeches about it. When we come to adults, anything else to say about the youth? Oh, youth. I think little children, comparing the little children to youth, little children, by and large, under, say, the age of 8, are pretty guileless, and if you can get their attention, they can absorb the fact that you want to walk into your space and kind of be with them, and they'll allow themselves to be worked with and pulled along and brought into the music, because, you know, they're just kids, and they're just, but once you get over a certain age, I don't know what that age is, people get, you know, they get used to their space, they get used to, and that's where a big difference for working with children and working with youth. Youth are, you know, they're pimply, they're growing, their ears are growing too fast, or whatever it is. Other parts of their bodies are growing, and they're just so sensitive, and they don't want to be centered out, so I can't go to you any longer. It's 5 years later, and all of a sudden, I used to have this wonderful rapport with you, and I can't. You're in my youth choir now. I've got to treat you as a young woman instead of a little child that I can sort of, and I think in sort of posturing this right in front of you, you can see there will be a natural difference in the way you lead when you go from one kind of group to another. When you're with children, you can act childlike, you can be delighted, you can excite them just by the sound of your voice, and you can hop around, and you can be athletic. And who's the guy, Southern Territory music guy?
Nick.
Simmons.
Nick Simmons.
Yeah. When I first watched him do some vocal work at Churchill Company in the South, I was amazed at what he got out of the kids. I mean, they were a motley crew. You know, he one of the choirs, and just everybody, boys, girls, and Nick would be jumping around and getting them fired up. And we're talking about the physicality of leadership and how it may change from group to group as you get older, but there's something about the physicality of leadership that does engage people where nothing else will. You're supposed to come in here, but unless it's brought to you, if you're a certain kind of player, a certain kind of individual, unless it's, you know, spoon-fed, unless everything about me as a conductor is involved, and that's where I think I get my largesse from when I'm conducting. Also, I've been in front of lots of people at the same time, and I've had to sort of open my world, my gesture world, so that I can control a lot of people at the same time. But I want you to think a little bit about the differences then between leading little people, leading the youth, and leading adults. Yes?
One thing that crosses over a bit, I was able to do the youth band at the Corps for a lot of years, and one thing I had to do with my kids, when they were little, all the way up to my teenagers, was, you talked about it earlier, about many people are shy, they don't want to sing alone, they don't want to play by themselves, they're terrified. So I tried never ever to make a kid single out, make them do it by itself. Not like I grew up, it was a finger in the face, and it was right down the row, it was terrifying. So I thought, I'm going to make the section play, for 2 reasons. A, to save time, well, many reasons. And now the kid who can't play it is going to get to hear how it goes by all the ones in his section that do know how to play it. So he's going to hear it a couple times by those who can play it. And so after the second or third time of running through that little lick or section, that kid got to learn that, didn't get singled out, and now they feel better, and we got to move on. So it killed several birds, but it works in our songsters too. It's the same thing with, I think if you were to single out individuals in our songster brigades, you'd find that you'd have less willing people than if you just kind of do it as a group, kind of a group thing. I think that works. And the ones who are struggling with it can learn quicker.
Very good point. Being intimidated doesn't work. It may have in the old British band school of the last century, where you could complain and cajole and put the knuckles to people. It seemed to come out of the sort of military tradition, that sort of beat them up. I've heard people, British people, talk about using the stick and how the only way you got things done was giving them a muscle, and it does not work today. Not with children, not with adolescents. I don't think it works with adults either. And we want to look carefully at what does work, and not just at what doesn't work. You're not writing down enough. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Before we leave the youth thing. It's gone. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to mess you up. I thought you were going on to the adult thing, that's what I was gonna mention.
We're going to go on to the adults. Let's do that, and if it drifts back in,
Okay. I was just gonna say about the agenda, I try to give my group the agenda early in the week so that they'll know what to prepare for that rehearsal. So that they know, this is the part of the piece that we're really gonna focus on this week. Then they don't show up saying, well, I worked on the beginning and you're gonna now rehearse the end. I'm not ready for that.
Right.
So that's the big difference for me for younger and older.
Bandmaster Yorkminster used to put he was a school teacher, so he had a photocopier in his office. He used to give us a little slip of paper. It would be on our music stand. We'd sit down, here's what we're doing. Give me sections. He was extremely well organized. Spent a lot of time in score preparation, so that he knew what he was going to do.
And the percussion thing too. I always try to make sure they know exactly what we're gonna do in advance, so that when they get there, they know what to set up.
Well, and our room, like our stuff is all over,
Yeah.
and there's 3 bands.
Four,
stuff.
five.
4 and 5, yeah.
But, yeah, believe me, I tried, about 2 years ago, I tried to get somebody from every percussion section to work on that, but everybody ignored me.
You didn't ask me.
I know. You're right. I asked Bill. Oh, sorry. There you go. I know. Answers in the
If I could add to that, when I was DMP in Indiana, I would send ahead of time, usually almost a month ahead, because I only met my band once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I would send out, here's the order that I'm gonna do it, the same notes, horns, work on sections. But what I would do, because they've got busy schedules, and I know they didn't have an endless amount of time. So I would, usually the Monday right after that rehearsal, it went out. So they had the next month, and I wasn't telling them like the Monday before rehearsal. I was telling them way in advance so that they had the time, I could honor their time, instead of telling them the week of, here's what you gotta practice for Saturday. And they appreciated that.
Yep. Well, adults certainly would, because they sort of value the moment, and they've given you a certain amount of trust. Okay, I'm gonna be with you for an hour and a half, what am I gonna do? Show me that you've thought about this and we can work together.
One more thing that I've done with kids, because I know like if you look at the O&R for singing company, it says 7 to 13, like the age. We do in our core based on school grades, just works better. And so we used to have 6th graders in singing company, and those 6th grade boys checked out like week 3. So how can I keep them engaged? And so I made them the librarian. Or I had a kid that I tried to get to lead, and be one of the singing company leaders. But so now the sixth graders are moved up because schools changed to sixth grade middle school anyway, so Doug has them. But now I find the fifth graders are like checking out about February, March. So what can I do to keep them engaged? And again, I have a list of what I wanna do, and so one becomes my pass out music, the other one becomes my gather the music at the end in between the songs. Because I want the kids to have that music in front of them. And so I don't have to worry about passing it out. You know, Billy does it, passes it out, and then Susie collects it every time.
Excellent.
And I don't have to worry about
Let's
it.
put it on the board that if a certain age will need other responsibilities, besides just the act of singing. Get them, maybe it's pouring the water out for the after rehearsal, whatever it is, just to keep them it's a way of massaging.
Yeah.
When I went upstairs for the last session, do you know what I saw? The first thing I saw? It was Dr. Harold on the platform, straightening the chairs and getting things organized. And I thought, this guy, with all he's done and the places he's been and the books that he's written, he's still the man that has to set up the chairs. And in terms of preparation and being there and getting things done the way you want them to do, you're going to be the chair setter upper, or you're going to have one of your people that you want to involve. And it's not just little people that need involvement. It's about relationship. I want to talk about that. Sort of the relationality of the leader and how do we engage with our people. In my own fantasy world, as it were, as I thought back over rehearsals, I thought about coming to a rehearsal situation. I know my prep is done, it's in my done. Give my list to the pianist, and I'll go and I'll sit in this chair, and I'll ask Ethan how he's doing, and maybe I'll know that his dad is not well, and I'll make an inquiry about that. This thing about the leader being sort of where the buck stops and I'm the authoritarian is just so passé. So we've got to find ways of having a relationship with our people, because if they like you, they're going to work for you. And if I like them, if I know something about them, I'm going to know how to interact with them. I don't think this is thought about enough in the world of, we think of this very clinically. We've been doing clinical things. This is where how I hold my body. This is how I move my hands. But your relationship with your people is so critical. And it's not just about music. It's about sharing humanity. It's about being the hands and feet. It's about being an example of Jesus. So that whole relationship business is always on my mind. And especially if I make a crack or I intend something to be funny, and I send a zinger over in that direction, because I know those two guys are always chatting. And the minute the baton stops, they're just, and I'll say, gee, tenors, you were right with us that time. Thank you so much. I have to know that that's not going to land inappropriately. And we're all adults in the room, so you make those judgments. And you're also with people that you know, people you're with all the time. So that's either a helpful thing, or, I mean, they know your weak, if you're with them all the time, they know your weak spots. So you've got to be even more prepared for that. But you can use the opportunity to have relationship that will affect the way the music is going to run, using your human presence, your interest in them and their family. Email is a great thing. That's a generational thing too. I know the email is out and TikTok is in, or whatever young people are using. I'm kind of old-fashioned, and if I know I didn't get to somebody in my rehearsal, I'm talking about my adult rehearsal, I can send them a little note. Didn't get to you last night, but hey, you know, you're on my mind today. What's happening in such and such a situation? That's always been what Salvation Army leadership is about. This isn't new just because we have email. Being a part of the lives of those with whom we lead. Presbyterian Church, they might call the organist the minister of music, but that's true. But we've always recognized the spiritual leadership of the leader. And it's no more important for the little guys or the youth than it is for the adults. You've got to find very unique ways to get close to people. Because once we get to be an adult, you know, we're stuck in a trap. We've decided if we're going to be a sociable person or somebody that is reticent in social situations. If you're with people all the time, then you know that you can use it. And so know your people. Maybe that goes on the board. Look for ways of encouraging that are not even about the music. Just look for ways of encouraging. And certainly if you're working on a particular thing and you finally get through, how do you reward that? And what happens when it finally is achieved, that little musical thing you've been working on? What do?
You show appreciation, you have joy on your face. Yes, finally. You got it. I'm proud of you guys.
Good.
Sometimes you have people in the room like, they need to hear that.
Certainly.
Oh, yeah.
I tend to shout loudly over the top of the music making because we've worked on it, now we're doing it in context. Yes, and I'll give a holler and nobody knows, but they know that I'm pleased. And sometimes that's enough. That's another thing. We do not think too much about how we can reward or whether it needs rewarding. And some things are so refined. We're talking about tuning and blending. You're working with your front row choirs just to play a simple melody, and there's one person, the second valve just never working. Finally, after the level and the sound, and we finally grasped it, and it's finally in tune. If you can register something that shows your delight. Response. How about there's response? A well-tuned triad can bring tears to my eyes. How many know what I'm talking about? Because you hardly ever hear a well-tuned triad in a brass band. Hardly ever. The joy of my life was finally sitting in a band playing second trombone. That's part of 4 parts. Okay. Second trombone, bass trombone. Oh, there's nothing like it. To be in the center of a I'm getting goosebumps. I was just trying to describe it. And we don't have those moments in a brass band very often, especially in the middle, with horn players, baritones, and others who, God bless them, never pick up their instrument. They'll never play a tune. They can't. They can't let the note doesn't speak on time. So how can they possibly get down the center? Oh. So when you finally have something to rejoice in, rejoice, make it splendiferous, let them know that you're happy, and they might want to try it again, whatever they think they've done. All right, let's go back to a basic question. Thinking of the rehearsal environment, what kinds of things are going to ensure productivity? Just the basic stuff. Could have started with a list. Started on time. That's it. Anything else?
Music's ready.
What is it?
Music's ready. Or,
Music is ready for the people. Are they responsible for their own, or does it have to be passed out every week? Whether it's the librarian or their own people,
You have to have a system.
that's a half-hour job. No matter how many people you got, especially if you're sorting 5 parts or 10 parts or whatever. That's a big. Have it sorted. Oh, to be able to start on time, there's all that stuff that has to happen. And if the people who like to be a little reticent and late come, they see all that is done. All of that stuff is being prepared and ready to go. Anybody else? What engenders productivity? Yes, Chris?
Yeah, just as a leader, it's so important you
putting the time in during the week between rehearsals. You've gotta know what you want to achieve, you've gotta be prepared, I mean, you said prepared, but not just for the start of rehearsal, you have to have a plan going in, because not everyone's gonna catch on to that, but a good chunk of your folks, especially if you've been with them for a while, they're gonna know if you're not prepared ahead of time for their rehearsal. And when we talk about the flow of a rehearsal, or using your time wisely, it all comes in the 6 days leading up to that next rehearsal, and your rehearsal will be so much more effective. You get so much more accomplished, and the people will appreciate it. You come with a plan, you're detailed, you're prepared. I always say, everyone, like we said, I think James was saying, everybody's so busy. You have to assume everyone's busy, and this is just another thing on the schedule for them. So if you want to get the most out of them, they'll appreciate it. So don't waste people's time.
So, do you start at the top and play the whole thing, Bert? Whatever it is?
On a new piece, sometimes we'll read it all the way through, just to give them a chance to do that.
Second week?
But then you go back and even on that first one, depends on how much is on the playlist for the rehearsal, right? But you may go back and spend some time on it after a read through, but yeah.
The second week that you're opening up something, you might just, okay, we're doing number such and such, let's look at letter B.
Yeah, a
Let's look at
plan,
letter X.
specific spot.
And then that's enough. That's enough. You don't start at the beginning again necessarily and play the whole thing.
Right.
When I came from my original home corps, where it was good, but it was pedestrian. Now master, okay, let's try that again, a little softer. Dynamics was the only thing that ever got talked about. That wasn't just played with arms, that was just talked about. And it was start again, we start at the top and we play through, and then we'd fall apart. Talk about this, have a speech about that, and then we start at the beginning again. So obviously that is not what you want to do. You want to go to the part that you know is going to mean trouble, and you give it your best shot, you give some instructions, you try it again. So that, well, let's make the question, what do I do about something that's not working? How do I fix it? What do you do? What do you do in high school? What do you do?
Slow it down, break it down.
Slow it down, break it down. How are you doing on the slow it down bit? Do they like that?
No, I didn't learn in school.
Yeah. And how do you make the slow it down work? Okay, this is not functioning. What do you do? You're going to have to establish a new tempo, so you call it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a tempo, and we're in. We have to lock it in because we've been playing something at another speed. So if you're going to do that technique, lock in the new tempo, and then you might have a chance of hearing things. Yeah?
What I've done in the past, the next section with my kids is, we're gonna play this 4 measures. We're gonna do it like 4 times in a row. We're gonna increase every time. So then we get to the end of that phrase, boom, do it a second time, we just keep going, keep a little faster, third time a little faster. Okay, this is the tempo we're shooting for, and then by the 4th time, we're at game speed. And then we'll run the whole section back, where now they know that part. So when they get to that part after the read through, they feel accomplishment because they nailed it, they took some time, broke it down, and you taught them some practice techniques too at home.
Excellent. Yep. Various tempos. With vocal, you can do something that's related to that. If tuning is a problem, or if register is a problem, you shift it down. Do the same phrase in another key and move it by half steps. Now, obviously, this doesn't work if your pianist doesn't like F sharp, but if I'm playing for the rehearsal myself, I can. Okay, that sounds strained. Let's get rid of that strain. We'll try to do it at a register that is easier for them, and they go, oh, yeah, we can do that. Before they know it, they're singing in the right key, and it's better. So that's a related kind of thing. Change the pitch of the problem phrase, vary the speed. Anything else? You said breakdown. What was it? Who said breakdown?
Break it down.
Breakdown.
Then you might have to count the rhythm, have do some clapping, tapping your legs, whatever, they sing it, a lot of times they'll scat parts, have them sing it first, which they do really well at, and we put the horns to our face and stop singing. They have to get the fingers worked out and all that sort of stuff, but you do it a little faster, you do that something simple, and it varies the rehearsal stuff a little bit.
For sure. We'd work with kids, we'd work with youth, we'd work with adults too, if you can get them to believe in it. Sometimes if they've not done it before, they're gonna rebel, thinking it's kiddish or it's silly. And there's also the mnemonics, where the rhythmic, the rhythms and the note values can be spoken if you know that wonderful list of how things go, then you can belong to the pattern, how it looks and how it sounds, and repeat that back to you. With vocal music, I do a lot of, I'm sorry, we'll go back to you. I speak the rhythms a lot. If we're working on something that's messy, they're just not getting the words of it. Forget the music, here's the rhythm, I'll give it to them, and they do it. Give it to them, they do it, and give it to them, now do it with the music, they put the notes on it, do that 2 or 3 times, and it's fixed. It's fixed. Now, we could have run it and run it and run it, and it wouldn't get fixed, but because they've taken away the discipline of having to hear the notes, and they're just speaking word rhythms. Words add a whole level of other clutter to our music making. So you can simplify that by talking it. And I'll just say, talk to me. And I'll go like that, as if we were starting that phrase again, and they'd talk the phrases, or talk that little bit, and that really helps.
I was gonna say that you might need to just give them, since we are pressed for time in a lot of our rehearsals, challenge them and say, the expectation is, yeah, we might have gotten it tonight, but it doesn't mean it's gonna happen next week if we look at it again. So set an expectation, you're expected to work on this, if anything, 10 minutes, a couple times during the next week, because we know that's the challenging part. A little challenge and expectation to maintain it.
Yeah, we may have succeeded, but here's some homework. Or if we didn't succeed, okay, we're not there yet. Woodshed, they used to say, go out in the woodshed and practice your harp. Let's do some woodshedding this week and get that. Excellent. Chris?
Yeah, the other thing, just to piggyback on what you're saying, when you would go to a particular phrase with the songsters, or a phrase with the band, and rehearse that spot, or break down and pair up who's got the same rhythm, let's work that group, and then the opposite group, and then put it together, or the main line, the primo line, and then all the counter stuff and the bass line, and all that sort of stuff. But it's letting them know why you're going back.
Yes.
That's one of the things you asked at the beginning. Any rehearsal I'm in where someone's just going back to letter A again and again and again and again, never tells the group why.
Right.
Those are always my worst rehearsals of all time. They drive me nuts. It's a pet peeve of mine. You can't assume everyone in your group knows why you're going back to letter A. You got to tell them why you're going back to letter A.
Yeah.
And then have a plan to, achieve what you need to.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Sometimes our music is so complex, convoluted, contrapuntal, layered, and we need that break it apart kind of approach. And I've always felt that the group needs to understand what their job is. Like we isolated the tubas this morning, and we were talking about how they support. Well, if they know what if let's say it's a rhythmic thing, and they're driving the rhythm from the bottom, they've got to hear it and tidy it up, and they can't do that. They cannot do that with everything else going on. They're just mortal human beings. They need to be able to listen to it alone. So they achieve that. Okay, now trombones. You've got this other rhythmic thing that lays on top of that. Let's practice that. Let's have this over here. And you've got the horns are doing something different. You've got a counter melody, and you work on that, and then put it together again. Over cornets. You're coming in and you're putting some color here, and it's wonderful. It will never happen cleanly until the people identify. And then they become almost like little arrangers themselves, you hope. They see that in this piece, at this moment, there's all this and this and this. This is your job. I can remember going over the trombone section, all 9 of them. Okay, this is your job. Be content. It's like everybody, they just like, there's too many people here. So this is your job. Concentrate on it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do, what was it? Oh, Bruce Broughton. No, his brother. Bill Broughton, trombone solo. Really cool, really cool. And the trombones had this little afterbeat thing. It was just so tasty. And it was awful. It was so infuriating. And so we broke it down and we had the tubas do the and cookie trombones. How do you fit into this? Take time, and again, it's a moment where you can show your delight, give in what they are able to achieve. And if they can't achieve it, what do you do?
Individual time with you later.
In my case, I think I screwed up the music and threw it across the room. And go ahead.
I think, speaking now not as a leader, a director, as a bandsman, as a member of one of these groups, this morning's a perfect example. We broke that down, and he told me exactly what he wanted. Now, when I go to do that, whether it's my kids or whatever else, now my concentration is heightened. When I get to that section where I'm gonna give it my best concentration to make sure I'm doing exactly what he wants, whether it's in divisional band or whatever else, this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
We do that because this is what they're looking for now. It wasn't just go back to letter A, let's keep reading it, hope we hit it luckily, and then maybe remember it. No, this is what I'm looking for, let's do it like this. So I think it's okay to have a vision, it's okay to ask for it, and then allow them to achieve it.
Hopefully it's a lesson you will never unlearn. If you learned it well the first time, it's something that really
I just know my attention.
made sense,
My attention peaks in it.
fixed it, worked better. You're all going, aha, yeah. That feels good.
One of my most favorite rehearsal moments was when I was in staff band, it was when Bill was in charge, and we were preparing for a concert weekend, and we did what we always did, start off with the hymn tune. And we were just playing it nonchalantly, like it was just a hymn tune. And he stopped us in the middle of it and came down on the whole entire band and reminded us what this really is about. Yes, it's a hymn tune, we're doing it, it's a warm-up, but he talked about that, yes, we want to play all the fancy stuff, we want to play all of the hard notes and hard rhythms, but yet the most important thing that we'll ever play are these hymn tunes, because this is our worship. And when he zeroed us back in as a group to remember that the easy stuff is just as important, if not more important than the big stuff, it actually changed, from my perspective, it changed the way that the band looked at a hymn tune from then out. I think it's important for with any of our groups, whether it's chorus or staff band, to remember this just isn't music for music's sake. This is worship, and to remind them in rehearsal that even rehearsal can be worship, and just have that reminder.
Can I go back to where you started? Glenn, sometimes that question was, do you read it all the way down? Sometimes, especially if time is of the essence, I look for the two spots that are either going to dictate the style of the song or the formula of that moment or a hook or whatever it is, and do those first, especially with kids, because you're going to get stuck on the reading and then it's like, no, I can't do this. Instead, when they hit the hard spot, I make a joke, you'll remember, and I would say, nobody knows the trouble I've seen, we're going after the trouble right now, right? So that whole thing, that I think sometimes that can be far more productive.
Yep.
And the other thing I want to say, what Matt is saying, is that it's really important for the other sections to hear what the other sections are doing, but they're not just hearing that, they should be imagining how their music works with it. So, inquire, I say, okay, I'm working on the altos, but how's your thing work? So they're listening because they hear it subliminally, but we're getting, how things go together.
Yeah.
So those pieces, it can be just a little chunk, and then you don't get stuck on the read-through, because people make a decision too quickly. And then I would say, until you can play every note, don't make an opinion about this piece yet, because some people get turned off right away, right?
Several valuable points, and not just for ordinary groups, for the best musicians that we've got, for a staff group too. Go start right on the spot that's going to cause them trouble, and even break that down before they try to sing it. Don't say, let's sing this. Here's the rhythm. Come on, Jesus, all you want to come, and do it. Let's rehearse that. Let's just talk it. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you build that confidence so that by the time you get there, I brought that piece with me. We're not going to get to it, but everything else before was dead easy. And then you come to that, and there's a bunch of black ink, and you get frightened, and you freeze. And, solve it before you do it. Maybe that's it. Solve it before you try it. I think we're just about at the point where I should be trying to wrap it up. Oh, no, there's lots of stuff.
That's wonderful.
You got all the time you want.
Right.
By the way, Len, take up that cross. The
That's
door.
it. That's it.
Is it?
And I had, yeah.
It was bugging me. I had to think of it.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one. I had Bob Merritt. Remember that name?
Oh, yeah.
Part of the Merritt family. He could play above the staff like it just felt like a chairs group on New Year's Eve. Yeah. Okay. Let me wrap up with kind of an apple, an ABC thing. ABC. A is for apples. Low-hanging fruit. Maybe that goes into what we've already tried to say. Fix things that will make the biggest difference right away. Low-hanging fruit, or A for apples if you're thinking ABC with me. Go to, you've heard it once through, or you've heard a section, go to the thing that will appeal, you're able to distribute this idea to the most people. Who will benefit as a choir, the whole, you're making a comment that the whole choir can respond to. So you're going after low-hanging fruit. B, I've got choose your battles. There are some things that in the process of learning, you don't do that the first week or you'll kill it. You'll give them an attitude to the, but you get them used to something and you'll bring them in. They'll know why you have approached the piece in the first place, and then you go after things that are going to be challenging or otherwise disappointing on the first read or the second read. So choose your battles. The last thing is be content. C is for be content. You can only do what you can do. And a lot of us beat up ourselves for not being able to unlock good things and make our groups sound like they're not, because we beat up ourselves. So it's be content with who you are, know your own weaknesses, and wear them. Say, oh, sorry, I wasn't very helpful on that cue. I'll try to do better next time. But also recognize that they can only do what they can do too. And being loving and drawing in your people and having them on your side because you understand their own limitations. I think that's a big thing. And in the end, yes, we're there to minister the love of God, and on a Sunday we're there to edify, bring the congregation, lift them up. So we've got this purpose all the time. But everything else that we're doing, sort of, as Colonel said last night, is a front-end work. And we've got this larger purpose. So be content that we're human, and you know the limitations of yourself and your own people, and just rest in that. And that would be my ABCs for a way of summing up where we've been today. Thank you. Thank you. I think we have coffee.
Yeah.
And after coffee,